Hello everyone. I thought I might take a few minutes to create a quick tutorial to help you understand the difference between descriptive writing and other forms of writing. So strap in and hang on, and let's take a quick look at the descriptive essay. Like other forms of writing, the descriptive essay has certain components that are required. The header is very different from the APA style header that you've been using. There's 4 lines. They should be in the same order, and you'll see that example coming up. The title will be centered, and you'll see that. You understand the 5 paragraphs, so be deep, not wide. The use of descriptive language is the big difference. Make sure you understand the words connotation, denotation, vivid language, simile, and metaphor. And of course, don't forget to put the essay in 12-point Times New Roman font. So now that you know the components that should be in your descriptive essay, let's talk about the assignment itself. You've been given a series of 10 images, sets of 5, and each one or each set represents in some way the same concept. And you'll see that demonstrated here. The idea is fun, and the writer was looking at the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster. And of course, the writer had to choose one or the other that suggests fun, and then write a descriptive essay to describe how or why the one was more fun than the other. And by the way, he chose the Ferris wheel. But as we go through this, I want you to pay attention to the way he describes the Ferris wheel, how the Ferris wheel affected him, and how he's lived with his Ferris wheel junkiness over the last number of years of his life. So this is the same thing you're doing, looking at 2 images, trying to decide which one best represents the concept, and then writing a descriptive essay about that concept. As promised, you'll see in the upper left, on the upper left margin, the 4 lines of your header: the writer's name, the teacher's name, the class name, and the date of submission. Then you have 1 double space, and the title of your paper is centered. You have another double spaced, and then the essay begins. I'll bet one thing that you'll notice right away is the appearance of first person. The first line is, "I have always been fascinated by carnival rides." And then it follows up with, "It amazes me that average, ordinary people eagerly trade in the serenity of the ground for the chance to be tossed through the air like vegetables in a food processor." So first person is fine. In fact, it's probably preferable, as the description that you're going to offer focuses around your interpretation. The second thing that you'll notice, I think, is the use of the vivid language. Average and ordinary people eagerly, they trade in the serenity of the ground for a chance to be tossed through the air like vegetables in a food processor. So that's very vivid. This particular writer has somewhere along the line picked up a good vocabulary and has used it to create a bigger image in the mind of the readers: the serenity of the ground, the safety of the ground, the security of the ground. All would have been reasonable choices, but this writer has used a particularly unique word. We also have the appearance here of a simile, which is to compare things using like or as. So here we have compared people to vegetables in a food processor. So the simile says, to be tossed through the air like vegetables in a food processor. So if we use the words like or as to compare 2 items, then we are using simile. Metaphor, by the way, is a little bit different. It compares two items or describes one item as another without using like or as. So our writer continues, it amazes me that at some point in time someone thought that people would enjoy this, and that person invented what must have been the first of these terrifying machines. For me, it is precisely the thrill and excitement of having survived the ride that keeps me coming back for more. So I think a couple of good vivid imagery here is terrifying machines, right? We might have put scary rides. We might have put, well, I don't know what you might have put, but terrifying machines is certainly a step up in vivid imagery. Precisely is another good word. Precisely the thrill and excitement of having survived the ride. So you'll see this first paragraph is full of vivid language and imagery. It has a metaphor, it has a simile, but it also has a very clear thesis statement, right? I've always been fascinated by carnival rides. The thrill and excitement of having survived the ride that keeps me coming back for more. So we should expect this to be a positive paper. We should expect to hear the good parts about these terrifying machines. So let's see if that holds true. So let's summarize this slide. Use vivid imagery. Use unusual or specific language choices that create the vivid imagery. Use metaphor or simile when you can. And just because it's a different type of paper, that doesn't release the writer from making a clear thesis statement. My first experience with a carnival ride was a Ferris wheel at a local fair. Looking up at that looming monstrosity spinning up the life out of its sardine-caged occupants, I was dumbstruck. It was huge, smoky, noisy, and not a little intimidating. Ever since that initial impression became fossilized in my imagination years ago, these rides have reminded me of mythical beasts, amazing dinosaurs carrying off their screaming passengers like sacrificial virgins. The droning sound of their engines brings to mind the great roar of a fire-breathing dragon with smoke spewing from its exhaust pipe nostrils. So again, here we have a lot of very vivid imagery, looming monstrosity, right? Now, he could have just said really big or large or a lot of different things. Spinning up the life out of its sardine-caged occupants. I assume everybody has eaten a can of sardines to know how tightly packed they are in those small cans. So we get the image of people being really packed into a little cage. What else does he say here? He describes it huge, smoky, noisy, and not a little intimidating. Ever since that initial impression became fossilized. Now there's a good word, fossilized in my imagination. Mythical beasts, amazing dinosaurs, sacrificial virgins, droning sound of the engines, fire-breathing dragon. There's a good metaphor. We're comparing the carnival ride to a fire-breathing dragon without using like or as. So the writer has done a lot of good stuff in this paragraph. Stay tuned. One of the things that I'll point out is that you guys have been writing with me long enough now to know that I'm a stickler for certain things like punctuation, subordinate clauses, compound sentences being punctuated properly, the proper use of coordinating conjunctions and conjunctive adverbs. And so if you notice here, I think this writer has done a good job at all of those. But listen to what he says in this paragraph. The first ride on one of these fantastic beasts gave me an instant rush of adrenaline. There's another metaphor. Fantastic beasts. As the death-defying ride started, a lump in my throat pulsed like a dislodged heart ready to walk the plank. As the ride gained speed, the resistance to gravity built up against my body until I was unable to move. An almost imperceptible pause as the wheel reached the top of its climb allowed my body to relax in a brief state of normalcy. Then there was an assault of stomach-turning weightlessness as the machine continued its rotation, and I descended back towards the earth. A cymbal-like crash vibrated through the air as the wheel reached the bottom, and much to my surprise, I began to rise again. So, of course, we have a lot of great language here, but you'll also see the comma and, its rotation, comma and, I descended back. The wheel reached the bottom, comma and then we have the subordinate clause, much to my surprise, and the comma, and then the dependent clause. So this writer has done a good job of adding the correct punctuation. I think in the second and third line, as the ride gained speed, comma. So there we have the subordinate clause with the comma. So yeah, that's one of the things that you'll want to pay attention to, because that's one of the things that I pay attention to. And I know everybody's going to look at this one and say, but Mr. Moore, that's not nearly 13 sentences. And you're correct, but it serves the function of the conclusion. In fact, I guess the biggest thing that it does is that it restates the thesis. My fascination with these fantastic flights is deeply ingrained in my soul. A trip on the wonderful Ferris wheel never fails to thrill me. Although I am becoming older and have less time or less inclination to play, the childlike thrill I have on a Ferris wheel continues with each and every ride. So again, we restate the thesis and close out with a little bit of what would have been considered attention-getting material if it were in the first paragraph in the introduction. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think this essay is good. Now, given your assignment, I know that you would have had to think, okay, well, what two images was this guy looking at? And so he might have been looking at an image of a Ferris wheel and a roller coaster. And they may have said, they may have been labeled fun. And then this writer had to choose between the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster as examples of fun. And so if you think in those terms with your assignment, then maybe you get an idea of how he has expressed fun through his experience on the Ferris wheel. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to look at one pair. You can look at all 10 of the images that I've provided, but one pair of them is you're going to choose to write on one image of one pair, right? Please, nobody write 10 narratives. I don't want to, or 10 descriptive essays. I don't want to read that many. But you're going to choose one, and then you're going to explain why it is to its topic as the Ferris wheel was to fun for this reader. And don't worry, if you get lost, give me an email and I'll see what else I can do to help. The next two slides are a little bit short as paragraphs go, and I know that you all will fall all over yourself saying, well, this is not 12 or 13 sentences. And that's right, it's not. These are a little bit slim, but they still are packed full of great, vivid language, good connotation. Each new rotation gave me more confidence in the churning machine. Every ascent left me elated that I had survived the previous death-defying fall. When another nerve-wracking climb failed to follow the last exhilarating descent and the ride was over, I knew I was hooked. Physically and emotionally drained, I followed my fellow sardines down the clanging metal steps to reach the safety of my former footing. I had been spared, but only to have the opportunity to write again. So one more time, we'll see the comma in the right place after the subordinate clause when another nerve-wracking climb failed to follow the last exhilarating descent and the ride was over. Of course, the conjunction "and," when it's not used to conjoin independent clauses, is just used to, here it's just used to combine the last exhilarating descent and the ride was over. Good stuff. Clanging metal steps, my former footing, all of these are really great, vibrant language that creates great imagery. Here we have the conclusion, which is really, really thin, but don't let that worry you. It's still packed full of good descriptive and vivid language. My fascination with these fantastic flights is deeply ingrained in my soul. A trip on the wonderful Ferris wheel never fails to thrill me. Although I am becoming older and have less time or less inclination to play, the childlike thrill I have on a Ferris wheel continues with each and every ride. So we have all the components of a well-written essay. The writer has considered the two images, Ferris wheel and roller coaster, decided which one best represented fun, and then has described why that represents fun, how it represents fun to him or her as it may be, and done a good job of expressing through that vivid imagery what a roller coaster, what a Ferris wheel ride is like.